Lovely to see everybody on the screen. I'm keeping my screen minimized, so I'm not going to see any faces this afternoon, but it's really, really lovely to see people joining us for this event. My name is Gillian Macaulay. I'm the interim co-head of fitness to practice in the Social Care Council, and I'm going to be your compere for the afternoon. So my job is to try and make sure things run smoothly. So hopefully we'll get through everything nice and smoothly. Um, for those of you who don't know us, we have been involved in developing this resource now for almost a year probably, and there's been a project group of us working together to bring it all to a conclusion and get it ready for the launch. So we're really, really excited to be sharing that with you today. We have a packed program for the next hour and a half, so I'm not going to talk for very long. Um, my first job is to hand over to our Chief Executive in the Social Care Council, Tracy Reid. Tracy is going to officially open our event for us. Tracy comes to the council with a huge amount of social work practice experience across children and adult programs of care and across sectors, and therefore she has lots of relevant experience in working in communities and working in the field of community development, and is really well placed to open our event this afternoon and talk to us about the importance of this new digital resource. So over to you, Tracy.
Thank you very much, Gillian. I'm now hearing myself twice. Let's try that. Are you hearing me twice? Okay, just bear with me a sec. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tracy, you're coming through fine.
Okay, I'm going to have to deal with hearing myself twice, but that's okay. Right, thank you. Well, look, you're all very welcome this afternoon, and it really is terrific to see so many of us here today to, I suppose, celebrate this launch of the Community Development in Social Work Digital Learning Resource. I suppose I would have to say, before I was a social worker, I was a community development worker. It was the first job I ever had. And I remember it very well. And I remember in that time learning so much about how communities were. And communities in Belfast at that time were actually in a very difficult place, it was in the Troubles, and it really always admired this approach of community development as a way that was, I suppose, to strengthen how our citizens lived and how the quality of people's lives, and to give some empowerment to communities that had indeed been through some very difficult times. As the Chief Executive, I am delighted that we are launching this resource for social work, and we're launching it on our learning zone. And I suppose communities for us in social work really sit at the heart of society. And it seems to me that any kind of meaningful assessment or interventions that we have must understand the citizen's place and participation within their community. Um, Communities are important. Social workers think a lot about communities. They think about how communities impact because we think as a profession about society. We social work. And if we're going to understand how people's lives are and how they exist, they are, yes, who they are within their family, but within their community. And those communities build our society. Um, and it seems that at the moment within our communities, we do have very significant challenges within communities. And no matter where people are working, um, the communities for some are providing fantastic support because they're connected to them and they're part of them. And for others, they are isolated within those communities and don't feel connected to them or indeed to others. Social workers are system influencers and navigators. And it's for that reason that the concern for and connection to communities sit at the heart of social work and what we do. Our role is to connect people to those communities. But the thing I learned all those years ago, it is not for social workers to social work those communities. It's not for social workers to come and think we're going to tell those communities how to do and how to operate. It is for us to work alongside those communities and to have the skills and the knowledge to do so. And that is what is terrific about this digital learning resource. Community development and social work is about promoting collective action for positive social change. It prioritises grassroots experiences to enable communities to set their own agendas, harness their own strengths, whilst promoting social justice and equality. We will not be able to get the best outcomes for our service users if we do not work with our communities. And as we set across strategically across, I suppose much of the work that we're doing in whole areas of social work operate, that sense of a neighbourhood model, that sense of a community-based approach is very much conversationally being talked about, but it won't automatically happen if we do not do this work well and do not engage in the proper way. Because as I've said, community development isn't social work in the community. It's about working with communities, empowering them to meet their own needs and supporting those who provide leadership in their communities and working alongside those people to deliver the best outcomes. And I think when we meet the opportunity to combine leadership in communities with leadership in social work, then I think we can deliver fantastic things in terms of mutual learning, growth, and improvement opportunities. Community development skills are so very important for social workers. And as, for example, some of our GP MDT social workers have shown, that when we come to that space with that inclusive building, working together approach, fantastic things can be delivered. Outcomes that are real lived experience, real lived improvements, and creating better lives. This Learning Zone resource will enable social workers to further develop those skills to effectively and systemically work within communities and with social work leadership as core. It offers fantastic practical learning tools, very cornerstones of good community development work, which is set within co-production where people and practitioners design and support together. With approaches of asset mapping, where we're engaging the strengths, skills, and networks with communities, and through partnership working, creating solutions across services, organisations, and community groups. There is something in here for everyone. There is something for all of us to learn. And what I think is really great is about the collective way in which this resource has been developed. It's giving voice to all those who receive services, those who receive community supports, those who are part of delivering those community supports, and social workers themselves. It also will also enable social workers to continue to develop their post-qualifying knowledge. And I suppose this idea of working with communities and in this way underpins very much the ethos of inclusion that underpins all aspects of the PIP program. And I think going forward, we have always had our service user involvement focus, and that is right, and our carers. But we also will always need the context of our community context for any aspect of social work practice. And that is what true social work practice is about. I would like to thank everyone who has contributed to this launch today, but also to the development of this tool. This is really important work, and I know that you're all working in jobs that are incredibly busy, but it is always good to stop, pause, take time to develop what needs to be done so that we can continue to spread on that learning and to drive forward improvement. I suppose in rounding up and in concluding, I couldn't kind of leave today without saying to you all and wishing you all a very happy World Social Work Day next week. So we're in that month of March now. I was going to say month of May, shows you where my head is. We're in the month of March, and social work World Social Work Day is next week. And I suppose it's hope and harmony in a divided world. And indeed, we do have a divided world at this moment in time. And I think never before have social workers and the work they do and the strength of community been required, both here and overseas. I always like to reflect upon on World Social Work Day that we are social workers here in Northern Ireland, but we're part of a worldwide community of social workers, some of whom today are working in some of the most complex and difficult situations that are affected by war and poverty and all sorts of problems. But ultimately, we will always go forward as a profession, and we will always be positive in our spaces and holding on to those core values which value the individual worth of our citizens and indeed our global citizens. And I would absolutely commend this particular digital learning resource as something that very much contributes to that hope and harmony. So enjoy all your celebrations next week, and thank you for all that you do. And on behalf of the council, for those who on here today are social workers and who are coming from other areas, both practice, academics, and indeed our communities, and some who aren't social workers, thank you all for what you do. to make our society a better place for our service users. So that's me, Gillian.
Thank you. Huge thank you, Tracy, for that lovely introduction, and for opening the event and for sharing your very personal thoughts on the importance of community social work and the value that social work brings to community-based practice. So that's very much appreciated. The project team, I think, as a whole, have been very fortunate having such wholehearted support from the senior leadership team and the Social Care Council in the development of this resource. So we really appreciate the backing and the support of our leaders in the work that we've been doing on this resource. So thank you. So it's now my job to hand over to a man who probably needs no introduction to a lot of people on this screen. Fergal O'Brien, it's fair to say we wouldn't have social work and community development with the profile that it has today if it was not for Fergal. And we're very fortunate to have someone who is so enthusiastic and determined and committed to the role and to the topic and to highlighting the importance of community development approaches in social work. So without further ado, Fergal, it's over to you.
You're on mute, Fergal.
Fergal, you need to put your sound on.
Just begin to think there's
Is
something
that better
wrong.
now?
Yes, that's
Many
better.
thanks, Gillian, for that lovely introduction. So if you don't mind, Alison, maybe putting it on to the next slide. Just to sort of say my own, I suppose, interest in this area would be, I remember actually doing a community social work module, thinking about community work. Was I going to do social work or community work way back in the 1980s? And Ulster University had a community social work module at that stage, and I was kind of learning that it's something that got marginalized over the year a bit. You know, it came off the agenda, and it's really encouraging to see how its growth and reemergence, you know, over the last number of years. So I've spent my life actually just in the voluntary and community sector, doing youth and community work with travellers, arts work, and then getting into adolescent social work, and then getting into a community social work role for 7 years in Brownlow, and then a manager of a community development team, which morphed into a promote and wellbeing team whenever they restructured the different trusts. So now the area that's really interested me now as a trainer, and I'm delighted to be in the same training department that Marita would be heading, I suppose, with us, and Brenda Horgan. And it's been a great place to actually really push the community development agenda. And in some ways, you know, there's a vision that, you know, really goes back in time. And I would point, and it's one of the things that we've actually put up on the policy resource, which is the mainstreaming community development and health and social services. That was 1999, Jimmy Kearney in the voluntary activity unit. And at that stage, there was some very innovative work where they mapped community development across 10 government departments. And, you know, it's interesting that they, you know, what in some ways what we're doing on this website is picking it up on the next stage. It's another major milestone on that journey where we have been mapping, and I'd say a small sample, because there's 120 has come through the postgraduate program, but we have a small sample, you know, from the postgraduate world, and we've also got a sample thanks to the Northern Ireland Degree and Social Work Partnership of some of the highlights that they have, you know, examples that have been highlighted at undergraduate level in the annual review of practice learning. So really, you know, we have a fantastic resource here that's picking up on an early vision. I would say that from the 1990s. I remember many very prominent community workers before me, like Jim Flynn or Rowan Davison in Belfast, or you know, Martin Quinn out in the West, Mary Black actually from a health improvement perspective. And I think all of those people have been absolute champions and drivers of community development in their own ways. You know, and we're picking up on a theme in Northern Ireland here that has been very strong. And, you know, I saw in the chat function there, you're talking about Siobhan, you know, I saw we chat there just in terms of in England, you're feeling, you know, it can be quite isolating in that role. And it is. We are delighted today that we have actually Vita Snowden, and she'll be joining us later on from for the panel. And she's the first that I'm aware of that's doing a community social work module in Derby in the UK. So it's great to have you, Vita, and we'll meet you later on again. But that's picking up on a theme that, you know, and certainly, Vita, you've been looking at what we were doing, and we've been working with you, and it's been very, very helpful to go backwards and forwards. We also have got a champion on here from Scotland, Colin Turbot, whose publication's been really timely, and he actually highlighted a lovely example in Derry of community development up in the MDT world in Clarendon. That's been a very useful resource for us. And so I'll come back to other people that are about, but just to sort of say there has been a gap. Having said that, even though there's been a long history, I was aware since the 1990s that there's been a gap in terms of the knowledge levels, in terms of how much, especially after the community social work module was no more. In terms of at undergraduate level, yes, there's elements of community development, but we basically, it could be, there's scope for much strengthening. And I'd really want to point to Dr. Daniel Mackle's work. We have a number of research articles that are actually up on this website. And Daniel Mackle has been an absolute champion within Queen's University at undergraduate level in terms of doing, you know, research into how practice teachers have been fulfilling the community development practice learning requirement across Northern Ireland. She did that with us during COVID. And then we also did an international comparison with New Zealand. And we could see that there was a lot of scope to strengthen the teaching at academic levels just by even lining up their assignments and asking people to look at micro, macro, meso levels of involvement. So the casework isn't the only show in town, the only kind of intervention. And community work has a lot to offer as a core intervention in social work, not just as a kind of an add-on. So we really want to see that strengthen. And I'd also say that Danielle has been working with herself. We're working on another piece of research, literally, which will be coming to an end in March. We'll publish that on the website. And that's 56 students at undergraduate level coming out of Queen's, and really how well prepared they are theoretically to come in and do it. There's great opportunities across, but people haven't always made the links with the appropriate theories or concepts. And Tracy, you made a link to, you know, core concepts there at the start, like asset-based community development, co-production, partnership, the kind of key concepts and what that really means in practice. So we have seen, the other thing I would sort of say in terms of what has really given this momentum and has been, I'd say, the Bengoa report at a policy level, where people said, we can't keep on doing what we're doing here. We need to look at a transformative approach to meet emerging health and social care needs. Health improvement is a lot to, you know, in that field, to looking at self-help and health improvement programs and promoting wellbeing programs. The PHA's contribution, to see Lucille Lennon here, very, very important contributions to this whole area in terms of early intervention and empowerment and community engagement, and, you know, the role that can play in terms of improving people's health. And social work now can play a lot in that in terms of social well-being. I go right to the heart of what is the purpose of social work. It's for keeping people safe, but also improving their social well-being. And community development's an awful lot to offer that area. Like if we go into the other area of the NISC, we've got a whole resource there on loneliness. And, you know, that's been, exacerbated during COVID. Community development has a lot to offer that area in terms of support to people from a mental health perspective. So I think Bengoa, as I say, was a real, for me, that was a really important point. And since that, then you're delivering together was published just about the time that the postgraduate course came on. So it was a very good marriage, that because 50% of the social work role attached to GPs is in community development. So there's a real need for training at that point. So NISC were quite visionary and joined up with the Department of Health at the time that the postgraduate programme was really agreed on, you know, and since that we've had the Jones report. And I see Michael Ferris on here, and I would look at people like that who've come straight out of the Jones report, looking at the reform of social care in terms of children's services. So, you know, you've had your time is here, and it's great that you're on the postgraduate course at the moment. because I see that as a growth area. So you also had the recent Reset program, which is all about neighborhood social work, neighborhood community development, and that's the Mike Nesbitt's report from last year. So in terms of, we're in a very, very good policy environment for early intervention and prevention and community development approaches. There's never been a better time to be doing this, but there is still a need, and we're certainly, our research has shown the need at undergraduate as well as postgraduate levels to strengthen the teaching component of that, to have social workers that are fit for the future roles envisaged in all of those policies. I'd have to then obviously mention that a major landmark in terms of the development of community development coming forward really was the postgraduate community development program, and that has been a fantastic partnership. In fact, we met this morning under Marita's guidance there, and a very it's a fabulous group of people that have come together, and we've had really it's quite groundbreaking, I think, within Ulster University to have both the social work and the community development departments working so closely together on this program. And you've had, Rosemary Moreland, Izzy Hawthorne, Steele, Eric Cowney on the community work end, and then you've had Rachel Naylor, Joanne O'Shea before that, and Campbell Killick, Emma McGuinness have all played roles in terms of teaching on the postgraduate level. And, the partnership, we've had a strong service user impact on that. We've had Ray Hamilton and Thomas, delighted to see you here, Thomas, who's made a fantastic contribution under the Hear Our Voices section of the community development website. And also we have another champion who will be talking to you later on, Peter Alexander, who's made a fantastic contribution in terms of the training. So there are many people that could also highlight David Milligan. Sorry?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you very much. Glad to keep me on target there. So just in terms of that program, the difference that has made, and I will put a wee chat function, application form in. Never miss a good opportunity towards the end of this if anybody wants to look at that in terms of their staff. But we've had fabulous outcomes out of that. And there's 2 pieces of research. The Bridging the Gap research was written, bridging the gap between social work and community development. That's had over 10,500 views and 20 citations across the world. And I'm delighted to see 2 people who actually recently quoted it here from Norway. It's fabulous to see Alexander Bossikon. I hope I've got the right pronunciation for you, Alexander. And I know you're a colleague, Heidi Lee Erickson. And there's a 2026 publication which we've added to the publication section of your own work and your preparation for international social work in your course. So in terms of the program, we have had 120 coming through with specialist awards and 14 masters when you look at accredited learning and 14 postgraduates. So that's been a fabulous thing across settings, sectors, right across Northern Ireland. And we've moved out, and I see somebody here from the Education Authority as well. So we've moved into the EAA. It's great to welcome somebody on this year from Paul Eaton. And we've also moved into probation. And we've had some cutting edge research with lifers, et cetera, coming out, and projects like Annie McAnallen. And we've currently got a couple of people from probation. So it's really to sort of say that we're really interested across sectors and settings of what, community development's got to offer. And the research has been a very important part of this to build an evidence base. We really welcome all that evidence base that's actually re-emerged, and it's all in the one place now, and on the new website. So we have a lot of practice examples, undergraduate, postgraduate. We've got the research, we've got publications like the Department of Health, seminal one between social work and community development, and co-production. We've linked into there. There's other links that's been published. And we have a number of reflective tools, and we have a number of, we've even got a policy quiz. Policy can be fun. Would you believe that? So would really encourage you to get on and have a look at that. And that regional conference was that was the start of that, the current research from rhetoric to reality that's just been published this year. So I'm not going to say anything more at this stage, but to thank many people, and I'm not going to name yous, but there's been many people that has taken us to this level. And I really particularly want to thank my colleague as well, Robbie McCaig, who's not here today, who played a big part with me in terms of the content part of this website, and the fantastic support we've got from the IT people. Eugene Curlin as a regional one, Mairead Hark and David Hamilton inside NISC. We've had some great support right across different agencies. People have really got behind us. So that's all I'm going to really say today, and it's lovely to see so many people here.
Thank you, Fergal. You better stop talking now, or Alison's going to turn your mic off. I really appreciate, Fergal, you taking us through a bit of the history there and how we've got to where we are with the development of this resource, and really where community development has come to from being a small part of social work education and people thinking about more individualistic approaches to social work, to where we are today, where you've really led the way in embedding it in the discussions around social work practice. And I suppose, we need to acknowledge that without your knowledge and the knowledge of Robbie and others on the project team, we wouldn't have the resource that we have. So we've been really fortunate to have all of the knowledge and experience that has come from yourself and the others involved in developing that. So thank you so much for taking us through that. And Fergal, you were talking there about how many people have been involved in bringing this resource together. And I suppose it's important to say that this resource would not exist if it was not for partnership working. And I'm going to invite Marita McGuinness now, the Assistant Director of Social Work, Social Care Governance, Training and Workforce Development. It's quite a title, Marita, in the Southern Health and Social Care Trust, to talk to us a little bit about partnership and the partnership perspective. But just to say, I suppose, before you start, Marita, this really came from your vision. It was you who set us on this path, and you've really shown amazing leadership in driving community development with Fergal and supporting Fergal in his enthusiasm and his commitment to this topic. So your commitment to partnership and your commitment to the leadership of this work, we would not be where we are today without that. So thank you, and over to you, Marita.
Thank you very much, Gillian. I said at our Community Development Management Board meeting this morning, I feel I'm getting a lot more credit than I'm due here, but it's lovely, and I'm so happy to be here at the launch of this fabulous resource this afternoon. As Fergal was saying, I have the pleasure of chairing the Community Development and Social Work Management Board, and I have to say, when I took up that role, I wasn't probably too excited about it, to be honest, because I didn't fully understand the potential within it. But I suppose, while the work of that management board is quite prescribed and procedural, and we do our business as such, we are so lucky to have a great collection of interested parties in community development and social work. It's a sort of meeting that you go to and you leave it richer than you went into it, for the enthusiasm and the spirit and the goodwill that is around the table. We have representatives on that management board from university, from the trusts. Fergal has referenced our service user input, which has been invaluable, and our input from the voluntary sector. So it's just a beautiful I suppose, wealth of collective knowledge, experience and enthusiasm. And I suppose within that then, we tended to go above and beyond the expectations of the management board piece. So I suppose in order to draw on all of that commitment and not just get stuck in the less exciting business of the numbers and all that stuff, we have kind of always looked to think about how do we use our collective influence to further develop the community development narrative and commitment. And it was out of that we had the conference in 2023. And that was, I suppose, a fabulous opportunity for us to come together and celebrate all of the work that is happening across the region in terms of community development. And any of you who were at that day, I think, will recall that there was great energy and enthusiasm. And I suppose internally then in Southern Trust, we couldn't let that go. We were also fired up. We then established our own sort of community development What Next group. And it was as simple as that. It was like, right, okay, that's dead on. We're doing good. But like, what else? What else do we need to be doing here? And I suppose that was built out of that momentum from the conference. And I suppose, obviously, it goes without saying, within Southern Trust, we are the lucky ducks who have Fergal as the community development lead post. So we are the host trust on behalf of the region. And so you don't need to imagine the energy and enthusiasm that comes with Fergal. And that just is a great motivator for all of us on this journey. I suppose when we began to think about, when Fergal and Robbie were looking at all of the resources and the stories in practice that were available to us in relation to community development practice, it became just so obvious that this was something that would grow and flourish within a regional partnership approach, drawing on the excellent community development work across the region in trusts, in voluntary and community sector, and then supported by our academic colleagues. And so it's from that that brings us here today, which is great to see that we've been able to bring it this far. And I suppose when we looked at that, the principle of effective partnership has been so critical to the community development work, both within the management team, the delivery of the training, and how we do our business. And I suppose when I think about partnership work, and I have to say that I am often drawn to think about the learning from NISC, because I believe that NISC have demonstrated and role modelled really effective partnership arrangements over time. And so when we began to consider how to bring this resource to life and where it could be housed, NISC seemed like the natural home, so well placed as the connector for social work across the region. And as ever, always an open door. That's the beauty of that arrangement in terms of, you just need to sow a seed, share an idea, and NISC are so responsive to that. So thank you for that partnership piece as well. I suppose when we think about the resource then, it is about engaging our frontline staff with community development approaches and supporting the application of theory to practice. And the resource really provides effective and accessible tools for staff to use. And I suppose when I think about the potential of the resource, I'm drawn to imagine it almost as a box of seeds, which will bear fruit in so many ways. Some seeds will be planted and tended in specific community development projects, but others may be scattered widely, landing in random places, taking up root unexpectedly. We won't even know they're there until we see the unanticipated outcomes and impacts. And that is the beauty of community development, isn't it? And I think that's the roots of it all, that potential for spread. And I'm so excited about the development of this resource and to get to this stage. But I suppose what often happens for me, and a bit like the community development What Next, I am brought to a place fairly quickly where I go, right, well, so what? It's great to have a resource, but what next? What difference will it make? Is it going to be, we used to talk about books on a shelf, now it's information on an electronic platform. But I suppose if that's all that it is, then that's not okay, that's not enough. And I suppose I think the challenge for each one of us today is to consider the so what. So we have this fabulous resource. How do we create the fertile ground for the seeds to grow and flourish? And each one of us have an opportunity to think about that. How do we create a nurturing environment for supporting the growth of community development practice in our services? The resource, as we all know, is only as good as it is accessed and used. So how do we support our staff to access and make use of this resource? And we need to consider how we can create the space for that, because we know that that's one of the major challenges with great intentions, but getting round to doing this. So there's something about, I think, how do we create the space to support our services and our organisations to use and develop this resource to develop our community development practice. You'll be pleased to know that the resource will be maintained and updated by the Community Development Lead, Fergal, at present, and I have no doubt that it will continue to grow and blossom with our collective commitment. So thank you, and now a great opportunity for us to get a sight of what the resource is and the potential within it. So thank you.
Thank you, Marita. Thanks for those really important insights. You very kindly talked about NISC's commitment to partnership working, and I suppose in the council we really hold partnership working really close to our heart. And the community development programme and the way that we've developed this community development resource really has been a template for good practice in partnership working that others can use and learn from. And I suppose it's really been with the amazing leadership that we've had, the enthusiasm, and above all, a real commitment by all partners that we're engaged with to developing and driving practice forward. And I suppose if we're thinking that Marita and Fergal have been the driving forces behind the content, we wouldn't have the resource that we're launching today if it wasn't for Mairead Harkin, our digital learning manager in the Social Care Council, supported so wonderfully by David in the digital learning team. Their commitment to developing really high quality resources for social workers and social care workers really make the Social Care Council a real leader in terms of how we provide information and resources that are really usable by the workforce. So I suppose Mairead is not only just the person behind the technical development, but she's also had the unenviable job of having to manage a room full of very enthusiastic social workers, and at times had to try desperately to keep us focused on the task, which most people around the screen will recognise was no mean feat. So without further ado, Mairead, I'll hand over to you to give us a run through of the resource and talk to us about how we've got to where we are today.
Thanks, Gillian. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. So I'm Mairead Harkin, as Gillian had said, the digital learning manager here, and I really am delighted to be launching this new digital learning resource to support our social work registrants. So you've heard from Marita about the background to the resource. So I'm now going to focus kind of on the development of the resource from when it came to the council, and finish by playing a film which will show you what to expect to find in the resource. So Gillian Macaulay, it was through Gillian who was instrumental in bringing the project to our attention in 2025, including the value of it to our social work registrants to support them to learn more about community development and how to apply a community development approach in their practice. So when I first met the content reference group, they had already a significant amount of content already developed, including a really significant toolkit of resources and publications. And as Marita said, they were looking for a way to make the content regionally accessible to the target audience. And thanks very much, Marita, for your kind words. So it was, agreed then that our Learning Zone website would provide that right location, and we in the digital learning team were really delighted to be able to support this project and to design the learning resource that we are launching today from the Learning Zone website. Alison, would you move on the slide? Thank you. So the community development and social work resource, like all our learning resources, has been designed and developed using evidence-informed learning theories and universal design principles to deliver an asynchronous, self-directed learning modality that is considered who our learners are and their learning needs, and allows them to work through the content at their own pace and from any device. As you see there on the screen, the resource has been designed to support you to meet the following outcomes. So by working through the resource, you will be able to explain what community development is and why it's important to your social work practice, explain the process of community development, identify relevant community development training that social workers can avail of, locate a range of other relevant resources and tools to enhance social work knowledge and understanding, and apply a community development approach within your social work practice. So the resource provides sort of bite-sized information interspersed with links to further information. As you've heard from Fergal, we have lots of examples from both social work students and social workers of their community development projects, along with examples from service users of community development and action projects, plus lots of additional relevant resources, tools and publications, including, as Fergal said, a policy quiz. Reflective questions are built into each section to provide that practical element that supports good learning design, supports the learner to consider and apply what they've learned in that section. The resource also includes content on our standards in the introduction section, and this is to support our social workers to know which of the standards of conduct and practice that working through this resource will help you to meet, along with reference to other relevant standards that you need to be aware of. They're providing guidance on how social workers can embed values like social justice, empowerment, collective action, anti-discrimination and equality in their everyday work. Alison, if you can move on the slide, thanks. So the resource, as you've heard, like all our digital learning resources, has been developed using a partnership approach. This underpins all the development we do. And we work with key subject matter experts. And in this case, as you've heard, was Fergal O'Brien, who was instrumental in developing the content, along with Robbie McCaig, who is Inequalities and Inclusion Coordinator with the Southern Trust, who formed our content reference group, along with Eugene Carlin, Regional Digitalisation and Promotions Lead for social work in the Western Trust, who provided that early graphic design. And I want to express a special thanks to all who participated in the development of the content and promotional materials, especially Robbie McCaig, who unfortunately is unable to be with us today. But he was instrumental in securing funding, and it's always difficult at times to get funding. So he secured some funding for us from the Public Health Agency, and that funding has been used to support the promotion of this resource and included the development of a welcome film featuring our Chief Executive, Tracy Reid, and an endorsement film featuring Anya Morrison, our Chief Social Work Officer, along with the development of promotional posters and pop-ups. But I also want to thank the NI Degree and Social Work Partnership, who sought content for their social work students to be featured in the resource so we could share from their learning from their community development projects. And also I want to thank all the social workers and social work students who participated in the pilot of the resource, including Brian Gormley, Social Work Development Lead from the Southern Trust, who helped us to proofread the material. And it's always great to have people who are willing to proofread our material. So thank you very much to everybody. Next slide, Alison. So as part of the development process, before we roll out any resource, we run a small pilot to test with target users to ensure the resource is meeting the learning outcomes and delivering a digital resource that is useful, usable, and providing a good learning experience. That pilot ran from September to mid-October in 2025 and included social workers and social work students. The overall experience was reported as either excellent or good, with 100% indicating it supported them to enhance, develop their knowledge and understanding of community development and to support their day-to-day practice, with 100% indicating that they would recommend the resource to a colleague. And while you can see the stats on the screen there, Fergal, you'll be really delighted to hear that they have increased significantly with all that promotion yesterday. There was a significant peak in our users. We've increased up to, there's 297 active users, but 420 engaged sessions, which is great to see, and over 1,100 page views. So that's excellent. And that was a significant peak from the promotion that we got from the research conference yesterday. And that's really excellent at this stage. And Marita, we do hope to promote this as we go forward out to all our social workers registered with us, and there will be a promotional campaign followed up. But I agree with you, it's not just down to us, it's down to that time element is so crucial when it comes to learning and development, and it is the one that is quite the most difficult and is always the biggest barrier to learning and development. So I'm handing that over to yourselves to support our social workers to find the time and provide them with the time. Next slide, Alison. So from the pilot, we always develop an online feedback survey for our pilot users to complete. And this slide provides a sample of the feedback from users, which, as you can see, is very positive, with words like comprehensive, valuable, user-friendly, broader understanding, and important used to describe the experience of using the resource. Users liked the mix of video, learning content, and resources. They saw the importance of those wishing to learn more about a community development approach for their practice. They valued the examples from practice and learning from their peers and service users, and they were encouraged to see the link to the professional and practice framework that community development is promoted within that framework. Finally, they valued the inclusion of reflective learning questions, which gave them a better understanding of why a community development approach is so important. So I'm now going to stop and talk before I finish the presentation and play our promotional video that we've developed to promote the resource and let you see what it includes. So I'll hand that over to Alison to play.
This resource has been developed to support social workers to learn more about community development and how to apply a community development approach in their practice.
The Social Care Council understands the very important contribution that social workers make to the lives of individuals, families and their communities. Working with a community development approach strengthens that contribution in a values-based and inclusive way.
Developed through the regional collaboration and in partnership with the Council, this resource builds on a community of practice ethos, with authentic examples from undergraduate and postgraduate social work. The resource includes sections as follows. What is community development? Here are our stories. Community development in action. The process of community development. Impact of training on practice. Resources, tools and toolkit. Getting started and training.
This resource offers a clear, practice-focused introduction to what community development means in the context of social work.
In Section 3, you will hear from a number of service users who have been involved in community development projects and the impact of these projects on their lives and community. These include co-production, easier than you think, fishing for participation and sustainability, Hear Our Voice, raising awareness of impact of dementia. In Section 4, you will learn about the process of community development, along with finding out about some practice examples. These include examples from social work students who have consented for their work to be included in this resource. In Section 5, you will hear a range of social workers who have completed the PIP-approved Social Work and Community Development Approaches postgraduate programme. You will find out more about the impact of the community projects developed by social workers on the course. You can also watch a film promoting the Social Work and Community Development programme to find out more about the course.
The project that I chose to complete was working with parents whose children were awaiting assessment for ASD and ADHD. I have personal experience of that with a daughter of my own. The waiting list is 4 years, and this really affects parents and their children. This area was highly unresourced. Parents become frustrated. They're in limbo land. They don't know how to help their child or where to go for help. I felt that by bringing a group of parents together to discuss the issues that they were having at that time might give them some skills to help them to manage their kids' day-to-day behaviours. The community development course made me much more of a reflective thinker, a reflective practitioner. It made me think about my role within the community and how I wanted to impact on those that I want to help.
Section 6, Resources, Tools and Toolkit, provides lots of additional relevant publications, including the Department of Health Reflections in Social Work and Community Development from the Regional Conference in 2023. Other useful web links and tools to help you delve deeper into the topic, along with a policy quiz to test your knowledge. Section 7 provides guidance on how to get started. You'll find information about a range of training you can access to learn more about community development, whether you're a student or a qualified social worker. The final section of the resource provides a short summary of what you will have learned by undertaking the resource, along with some final reflective learning questions. Reflective learning questions are included in each section to support social workers and social work students to reflect on the learning content and bring this into discussion during supervision with managers and colleagues.
As the regulator for social workers and social work education, we require practitioners to continue to learn and develop throughout their career. This resource will support social workers to learn about community development and how to apply and embed a community development approach in their practice. So please take time to explore the tools within this resource. Complete the reflective learning questions and learn from real experiences. These will support you to embed community development into your everyday practice and better support our communities. I would like to thank you for taking this opportunity to develop your knowledge and skills in this important area of social work practice. And I very much hope that you enjoy this learning experience.
I encourage every one of you, practitioners, team leaders, managers, to explore community development and social work on the Social Care Council Learning Zone. Consider where and how you might incorporate community development principles into your work. Even small changes, a shift in perspective, an invitation for community-led planning, a collaborative meeting instead of a top-down one, can lead to meaningful, sustainable impact. Together, we can help build communities that are stronger, more equitable, more empowered, and offer better, more holistic support to those we serve.
Thanks, everybody. The resource is freely available from the Learning Zone website via the Learning Zone library, and you can access it from the QR code on the screen. This takes us, the users, to a new landing page that we've developed to support the launch of this resource. It provides you with access to the promotional video you've just watched, the full version of Anya Morrison's film, a link to the resource and the promotional poster, plus a sample of the feedback from users who participated in the pilot. I hope you will take some time today or over the next few days to have a look at the new resource and to share it with your colleagues and any students you're supporting or responsible for. This is a resource that has been designed to support social workers to learn about community development and provide, as Anya Morrison said in her film, practical ideas and frameworks for working with communities, building trust, supporting collective learning, enabling communities to work together to plan change and influence policy or service delivery from the grassroots up. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mairead. I hope everyone agrees that the resource looks great and that you'll spend a bit of time exploring it in more detail. Now that you have the QR code and access to the landing page, we really have spent a lot of time building it for the user and making sure that it's user friendly. So we hope people enjoy the content and have an explore. One of the most important things, I suppose, when the project team were developing the resource was that service users and individuals with lived experience were really at the forefront of what we were doing and what we were aiming to achieve. And it's my pleasure now to introduce Peter Alexander, who's here to represent individuals with lived experience. Peter works within the health and social care system with a particular focus on the Southern Health and Social Care Trust. Through his work, he has been closely involved in supporting community development and participation, helping to strengthen connections between services, communities, and the people who use them. Peter has a strong interest in ensuring that the voices of people with lived experience are heard and valued, and we've really tried to achieve that with the resource as we've been building it. And promoting approaches such as participation and co-production so that services are shaped not just for people, but with them. Today, Peter will speak about the new community development website and the difference it can make, not simply as a place to hold information, but as a platform that can support learning, connection, and meaningful engagement across the region. So without further ado, Peter, I'm going to hand over to you.
Good afternoon, all, and thank you very much for that introduction, Gillian. That's very kind of you. But I can assure everybody that my part in respect of this resource is very small. But I do hope that each of you finds it useful and then also finds that the development or community development is enhanced as a result of what has been put together here. So it's a real privilege for me to be part of the launch today. And I'm speaking to you as someone living with frontotemporal dementia and as someone who has had the opportunity to work alongside professionals in the co-production of Hear Our Voice, as you've already heard today, documentary, which is including in the learning resource. And I would recommend everybody, if they haven't watched it yet, to watch it and to also pass on the link to others. It's been It's had very good feedback, and I think you'll find it invaluable for helping individuals living with dementia. But as others have said, what's good for dementia is good for everyone. And I think that does apply also in respect to social work. What's good for one person in social work is good for everyone. And the thing which has struck me today by hearing the various contributions is the importance of person-centered care. When person-centered care is done right, then we'll also do community development right. So moving on from that, so today I'm clearly not speaking as a professional social worker. I am speaking as what the system sometimes describes as an expert by experience. But I'm absolutely not an expert. Experience teaches you things. It teaches you what matters. It teaches you what helps. And sometimes it shows you things that systems, however well-intentioned, may unintentionally overlook. And it is fitting that a learning resource about community development in social work includes voices like ours. One of the things that strikes me about today's events is the regional nature of the work behind it. Looking at the programme and the organisations involved, it is clear that this has not been developed by one team or one organisation. It reflects collaboration across Northern Ireland, bringing together the Department of Health, NISC, Health and Social Care Trusts, educators, practitioners, and importantly, people with lived experience. And it reflects a great deal of commitment from many people in this room who care deeply about the future of social work. And that feels entirely appropriate, because community development at its best is done with true, genuine, and authentic co-production. Communities themselves do not sit neatly inside organisational structures or services. They exist across them. And good social work recognises that reality, working with communities rather than simply working around them. That is how meaningful change usually happens. This learning resource reflects that same spirit of collaboration. And one of the most important ways that happens is by listening to the voices of people with lived experience. One of the most important aspects of community development is recognizing the value of experts by experience. People who live with the challenges we are trying to address often hold insights that professionals cannot gain in any other way. That knowledge is not theoretical, it is lived. It comes from everyday experience, from navigating systems, from receiving support, and sometimes from struggling when things do not work out as they should. The Hear Our Voice documentary, which forms part of this learning resource, grew from that very idea. It was developed through a process where people living with dementia worked alongside professionals to create a learning resource for health and social care staff, not as subjects, not as case studies, but as partners in developing the learning itself. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that process. That is what genuine co-production looks like. And when lived experience is included, in that way, learning becomes richer, deeper, and far more human. There is a well-known model that helps explain the different levels of participation. It is called the Arnstein's Ladder of Citizen Participation. It describes the different ways people can be involved in decisions that affect their lives. At the lower level of the ladder, people are simply informed about what is happening. Sometimes they may be consulted, asked for their views, but consultation alone is not necessarily a means to influence. Further up the ladder, we begin to see real participation. That is where people with lived experience and professionals begin to work together. And at the very top of the ladder, we reach something more powerful: shared decision-making in partnership. That is where co-production lives, and that is where community development in social work can become truly transformative. And moving up the ladder requires trust, openness, and a willingness to share power. Today we are launching a new learning resource, and from what we have already seen, it has the potential to make a real difference. But if I may offer a gentle observation, one that I may actually shout, our system is very good at producing information. We produce reports, guidance, frameworks, strategies, and now learning websites. But sometimes we're not quite as good at dissemination. Actually, let's be honest, that is being kind. Or at making those resources actually become part of everyday practice. So perhaps the real question for all of us today is, how do we make this website sticky? How do we make sure it gains traction? That is, that it's shared, that is, that it's talked about, that it reaches social workers across the region. Because the success of this learning resource will not be measured by the quality of the website alone. Knowledge only makes a difference when it is used. It is measured by whether it changes practice. So perhaps the challenge for all of us is to think about how this learning resource can be put into practice. It could become part of the training for newly qualified social workers. It could be in supervision and reflective practice. It could support students learning about community development, and it could help strengthen the partnerships between social workers and communities they serve. Because one of the most powerful aspects of this resource is that it includes the voices of people with lived experience, a model that we should all be using when working in community development. Voices that remind us what service feels like from the other side. Voices that help to understand what matters most to the people and communities we work alongside. And when we listen carefully to those voices, we often learn things no textbook or policy document can fully teach us. Sometimes the most powerful learnings come from simply listening. Living with frontotemporal dementia has changed many things in my life, but it has not yet removed my voice. And it certainly has not removed my belief in the power of communities working together. So as we launch this new learning resource today, my hope is that it becomes more than just a website. But perhaps more importantly, my hope needs to translate into your action, that it becomes a living resource. Something that sparks conversations, something that encourages social workers to think differently about their relationships with communities, something that reminds us that the people we work alongside are not simply recipients of service. They are partners in shaping the solution. And an important part of that partnership is recognizing that communities must be able to retain ownership of the things that matter to them. The role of social work is not to take over that ownership. It is to support people and communities in navigating them, to walk alongside them, to enable, to encourage, and sometimes just to simply listen. Because when communities, professionals, and people with lived experience work together as equals, something powerful happens. Services become more responsive. Communities become stronger. And social work becomes something that is done with people and not simply for them. Because when we truly hear the voices, community development stops being a concept and it becomes a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's very inspirational. Your levels of articulation are so beyond mine in terms of the call to action that we need. We're very, very, very conscious that today is the beginning of a journey rather than the end of a journey in terms of where we take this resource and how we get it out into the world. So thank you hugely for your words of encouragement, and also you're shoving the right direction in terms of for the project team, our work is not done. We have now to get this resource out into the world and get people using it and keep adapting it and changing it and helping it actually change practice. So thank you so much. Your message is really powerful, and I'm sure everybody on the screen enjoyed listening to it as much as I did. It has given me enthusiasm for the next stage, so thank you very much. We're now going to move on to something a little bit different. We have a Q&A session that's going to be hosted by Fergal, and we have a number of panel members on your screens. I'm just going to quickly introduce you all. So we have Vita Snowden, Chair of BASWA Community of Social Work Subgroup. Sorry, I struggled to get that out there for a moment. And we're very lucky to have Vita because she's had such terrible, stressful technical issues today. So it's even better that you're here, that we were able to get you in. So we're very privileged to have you. We have Jerry Heary, who's the coordinator of the practice teaching programme for Northern Ireland. We have Brian Gormley, who you've heard already, helped us proofread the resource and is also a practice teacher and has a background in community social work. And we have, last but not least, we have Jenna Hanna, who was an Open University social work student. So that's our panel for the afternoon. And Fergal, I'm going to hand over to you now to lead us in the question and answer session.
Okay. If you all want to unmute just to come in, the ones on the panel, that would be great. And I would like to maybe just start with Jenna, if you don't mind, as a social work student, you're level 2 and you Open University. You have a background in as a social work assistant before you come onto this, working with an MDT team, which really leaves you very well positioned to be here today in terms of the amount of community development you were doing before you even come onto the course. So I really want to ask you, Jenna, as a student that's currently on placement, how have you been able to use this, make this work for you, this website? How has it been useful to you?
Well, like you say, Fergal, I have been working as a social work assistant for 5 years now within the multidisciplinary social work team within GP surgeries. And a large part of our role was community development. And I would have believed that I had quite a sound foundation of knowledge of community development. But after using this resource and working my way through it, it has really sparked my motivation to develop in this area. The reflective tools have really helped me to look back at the work community development that I've completed to date and realised what I could do differently, such as working in collaboration with marginalised groups and working with them rather than for them. The community development theories, the models, the approaches, particularly the community development process has been really, really helpful in my capacity as a student, because we have to meet requirements for community development, and that has really helped me guide the process from start to finish, and to provide evidence to make that criteria. I find the practice examples really, really useful, and they really emphasize the importance of co-production and how community development should really be embedded in everything that we do. It should be embedded in daily practice. There's opportunity for community development on such a massive scale. So it's really ignited that passion for me. The access to policies was really useful, the publications, the Northern Ireland Neighbourhood Health Model, that's something new to me, so that was introduced to me. There's links for training with Elevate NI and the Community Development Health Network. They're fantastic. I've used those both since as well. And I suppose one word that I would use to summarise my experience of the learning resource, I would say it's been really refreshing. I find it, like I said already, it's really ignited my passion for community development. It's really helped me to reflect on my personal values, the social work values, the ethics, and really reignite my passion for social work. So I would absolutely recommend it to any student or any colleague in supporting your social work journey. It's been fantastic.
Jenna, thank you so much for that. That's a very, very comprehensive perspective you've given, and I'm delighted to see how that has been supportive to you, because you're one of the key target people that we really want to try and reach. So it's delightful to hear you talking like that and how that has been helpful to you. I'm going to stay on the kind of frontline area before I go to more strategic comments. So I'm going to ask Brian, as a frontline practice teacher, next to really give me your perspective as a practice teacher who's trying to enable students to fulfill their community development requirements. How would it have been useful to yourself?
Well, could I just say, it's very rare you get something that's both broad and deep at the same time, but this tool is excellent with that. It's deep in many senses. It's deep and it's profound, but it's deep and it's there's a lot to it. It's not shallow. It gets to the meat, but it's broad as well. It's not just local, it's international. The scope is so good. And there's plenty of stuff to take away. There's links to learn more. So not only are you looking at things in the immediate way, but you can take your time over it. And I've found that students are engaging on topic one and finding, goodness, this is like a spider's web, and it draws you in so well. It's very well put together. So I find it very useful to aid conversations and just start anywhere. You don't have to start in the beginning. You can begin anywhere. For somebody who doesn't really know very much about community development, it's helpful just to start with those descriptions. For people who maybe a step ahead, you can go straight to hear our stories for some practical demonstrations of it. But as an overall resource, it is just so good. And can I just say as well, just take the opportunity, NISC are so good in terms of the other ones like digital skills and the learning resources, the digital learning resources. They tie in so well with this as well. So they're not divorced from it. As a package, I think the NISC learning zones are very good for students and for practitioners.
Thank you so much for that, Brian. It's really lovely to hear that. Can I maybe ask Vita, as the chair of the BASWA Community Social Work Group, which I had the pleasure to meet you on for UK, and also as an innovator in terms of bringing forward a community social work module in Derby University. Can I ask you, from your perspective, how you would find this website of use to you?
Sure, yeah. Fergal, picture the scene, if you would. You are someone who's gone to a social work interview. You think that social work is about statutory work, working with one-to-one, doing casework. And immediately, as soon as you start, you have a community social work module and your eyes are being opened that there's not just one pathway to social work. And suddenly there's this website, a resource that has exactly what Brian says, all the richness and diversity. So for social work students, there's academic articles there. There is all kinds of different resources that they can draw on. But for my module, because it's the first thing that they come to as social work students, they are struggling to make the connections between, so what does that mean for my practice? And certainly, Peter, can I say that next year I will be playing the documentary that you mentioned and others from the website, so that our students can know straight away this is actually what it means. And the importance about having our community social work module there at the beginning of our undergraduate program is it prepares the way for their voluntary sector placements. So they immediately have some live examples. They immediately are able to connect theory, knowledge, and skills through the website, so that they can use those when they're out in practice. So lots of people have been talking about today, which is brilliant. So we've got this website. What are we going to do? I'd like to think that I'm at the beginning of what are we going to do with our students. And my next step is to use the website to talk to our practice educators locally, because one of the issues is, and use it as a training tool. One of the issues is we often have practice educators who are familiar themselves with statutory placements and don't have that broader knowledge. So it's absolutely brilliant to have a tool that I can use with them, with colleagues, and with our students. So thank you so much for inviting me here today and for the wonderful resources that you've provided. I will be using them. We will be using them, I hope, in England, certainly at University of Derby.
Thank you so much, Vida. And I can tell you already that people are using your article that's on it. When they're looking at the actual area of carers and community development, is a fantastic article that, you know, that was the subject of your PhD. And it's very relevant to a lot of people that come on the course who are interested in finding out more about carers and stuff. So it's a really, really good perspective. So thanks so much for that. Last but not least, I'm going to ask Jerry Heery, who's a huge amount of experience for many, many years. He's known as the person who's really developing practice teachers across Northern Ireland. He's the coordinator for practice teachers across Northern Ireland. So I really want to get your perspective, Jerry, because you could constantly people from all over Northern Ireland coming to you every year, and they play a key role in training.
Well, thanks, Fergal. Thanks for inviting me, and just briefly acknowledge your long-lasting commitment to this core area of practice of social work. But just about the practice teacher programme, one of its main challenges, and indeed its richness in a sense, is we bring together a wide variety of social workers from across all sorts of different settings, you know, in Northern Ireland, and sort of put them into the same room. And we'll find from that candidates probably learn more from each other than they do from us as the trainers, because there's that mix. And I think that's going to be the situation with community development, where some of our candidates will be people who maybe went through the PIP course, your course, Fergal. Other people maybe, and they're very immersed in it. But there's others maybe more heavily involved in more individualized intervention, you know, with more limited community development access or experience of it. So this website is really going to be really useful to our candidates. As Brian mentioned there, you know, about broad and deep, you know, it allows for sort of a light touch maybe for those candidates who are really heavily involved in the community development, ranging right across to helping those with more limited experience, where they can access a range of current literature, really excellent resources, examples, and all sorts of ways into the community development. So in short, I'm just really looking forward to bringing this material into the practice teacher programme, and really to help our candidates use it to build their understanding and knowledge of the breadth of community development, but more importantly to promote it with their new students, with the new social workers right from the start. And I think, as Vida was alluding to there, that hopefully we can play our part. And again, I would just finish by saying a great sincere thank you to all the people involved in this project. I hadn't realised until I'm sitting here today just what's been involved, and very well done.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of the contributors, for that. It's been very, very helpful to get those perspectives. And as I say, this has been recorded today and it'll be on the landing page. So your words will be there for other people to hear. So.
Thank you all very much, and thank you, Fergal, for your expert chairing. It's lovely for those of us who have been involved in this for such a long time to hear other people saying it looks good, because I think when you stare at something for such a long time, you sort of, you know it looks good, or you think it looks good, but you don't know how it'll land with other people. So it's really nice to hear from people who haven't been involved in it that it's going to be useful, that it's going to have a life outside of being developed, and that it's going to take legs, and it's going to grow, and it's going to be out there, and people are going to be using it. So that's really lovely to hear. We're coming now to the end of our event, and we're going to land this event on time, which at points in the afternoon, I wasn't sure how we were going to get there, but it was nothing to do with me. I think it was Alison giving you a 2-minute warning, Fergal, that kept us on track. But for our closing remarks, I'm going to hand over to Catherine Maguire, who's currently our interim co-director of regulation and standards in the council, and she's going to bring our event to a close this afternoon.
Thank you, Gillian, and everyone else who has contributed. What an inspirational afternoon that reflects the inspirational resource that has been created. And for those of you who are not so familiar with the Social Care Council as the regulator of the social work and social care workforce, you might think, what on earth is a regulator doing delivering this kind of project? So our model of regulation at the Social Care Council is based on regulation standards and workforce development, underpinned by partnership. And I think we've heard that reflected right across this afternoon. And we like to think that we can see the handprint of social work on the development and evolution of our model of regulation, which is very different to other professional regulators across these islands. We've heard much this afternoon about partnership. And Peter, you talked about the importance of working across systems to improve outcomes for those that we work with. I think the development of this resource is a great example of what can be achieved when we free ourselves of those artificially created barriers around our systems. We also heard your challenge, Peter, about how we take this work to the next stage. And I think you've coined a phrase that certainly I'll be using in the future. How do we make this sticky? On a few occasions in my very long career, I can say at this stage, I have come across a couple of pieces of work that really kind of reflect what can happen when you get the right group of people in the right place at the right time. And I think we've heard wonderful examples this afternoon about how that synergy has been created and worked together. Gillian had asked me in closing the event if I could thank people, but it strikes me as we come to the end of this afternoon, the warmth of relationships between all of you who have been involved in the development of this work is so evident in the way that you've spoken to us and the way that you've spoken to each other, and the gratitude that you express to each other as well. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time thanking all of you because you've done that job for me. I do want to just acknowledge the contribution of Darren Strawbridge, who we know passed away last year and was central to the development of the social work and community development reflection resource. So it's so important to say that, and also to thank you for your contributions this afternoon. So to Tracy, Marita, Fergal and Peter, and our panel, Jenna, Vita, Jerry and Brian, and to Gillian for emceeing it as well. And I suppose I should thank Alison for keeping us to time, and Maria and for all the work that she has done as well. So just to kind of reinforce all the thanks that you've given to each other, and from a Social Care Council perspective, just to say thank you so much for your commitment and tenacity in bringing this resource to the stage that it's at. But thank you, everyone.